I never could have imagined that a single, ordinary evening would shift the entire course of my life. What began as nothing more than a simple dinner and a casual movie night with my stepson slowly unraveled into something I had never dreamed or feared would happen. There was a restlessness inside him that unsettled me. But what I failed to recognize at first was that same restlessness had been living inside me for far longer than I was willing to admit. And then, in one painfully quiet moment, I realized that some boundaries, once crossed, can never be repaired or forgotten. Welcome to Family Secrets Exposed. If this is your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Your support helps us continue to share powerful, real-life stories just like this one. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Eleanor. That summer, the house felt less like a home and more like a waiting room where nothing ever really happened. My husband, George, was always away for work. Different cities, different hotels, endless late-night calls with the same tired excuses. Our marriage had shrunk into something more like a set of arrangements. Bills to be paid, schedules to be kept, appearances to be maintained. The warmth we once shared had long cooled. The nights stretched endlessly, the silence pressing down on me until it felt like silence itself had moved in as my permanent roommate. And then came Liam. He wasn't a stranger. Not exactly. Liam was George's son from his first marriage. At 21, he was polite but restless, trying to figure out where life would take him next. College applications, job searches, ambitions half-formed. George suggested he stay with us for a few weeks, just until he sorted things out. At first, it felt harmless enough. We were like neighbors sharing a roof rather than family. Late-night snacks in the kitchen, laughing over old movies, jogging together in the mornings. Nothing about those moments seemed threatening. Nothing about them seemed dangerous. But as I would soon learn, danger doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it slips in quietly, disguised as comfort. One evening, George called to tell me he'd be gone longer for work. Another late night, another empty bed. I poured myself a glass of wine and settled on the couch with the TV humming faintly in the background. That was when Liam padded into the room, dressed in sweats, his hair damp from the shower. He looked so casual, but there was a weight in his presence that hadn't been there before. He sat down across from me, unusually quiet, and then he looked at me with a sharpness I wasn't prepared for. "You look lonely," he said softly. I laughed it off, brushing away his words. I told him I was simply tired, but the way he kept looking at me, it was as though he had been watching more closely than I had realized. He noticed things. My music playlists, the books I left scattered on the table, the perfume I wore when I wanted to feel a little less invisible. What had once felt like harmless attention had shifted, hardening into something bolder, something almost dangerous. And then came the words that should never have been spoken. "I don't think George deserves you." My heart froze. I told him to stop, to never say things like that again. But deep inside, in the part of me that had been starved of affection and tenderness for years, something stirred. A dangerous silence, a silence that admitted I didn't want him to stop. That night stretched on longer than any other. We talked until dawn, our voices hushed but urgent. He spoke of his struggles, how he never felt like he truly belonged, the constant comparisons, the pressure to live up to expectations. I opened up too, in ways I hadn't with anyone in years. I spoke of loneliness, of how my marriage had become an empty shell, of how much I missed the woman I used to be before life grew so mechanical. And slowly, the walls between us began to crumble. When Liam reached for my hand, I didn't pull away. When he whispered my name, my resolve weakened, and when his lips finally touched mine, I didn't stop him. Every fiber of my being knew it was wrong. Every instinct screamed against it. But in that stolen moment, nothing else seemed to matter. It felt as if the loneliness had finally cracked open and someone had stepped inside. Morning arrived like a punishment. The sunlight spilled across the room, cruel and heavy, exposing everything. Reality hit me harder than any argument ever had. The weight of guilt pressed down on me until I could hardly breathe. Every corner of the house seemed filled with the ghost of what we had done. I tried to distance myself, to convince myself that it had only been a single lapse, a fleeting weakness. but Liam didn't keep his distance. In the kitchen, his fingers brushed mine as he handed me a cup. In the hallways, his eyes lingered longer than they should have. Sometimes he slipped little notes into my palm. Words that carried a hunger I was terrified to admit mirrored my own. One evening, almost pleading, he asked me, "Don't you feel alive with me?" And the truth I couldn't deny was yes. With him, I felt something I hadn't in years. Not the steady, safe, predictable love that marriage had settled into, but something raw, reckless, and intoxicating. It wasn't love in the purest sense. It was something darker, needier, like a dangerous rope thrown to someone drowning in emptiness. Looking back now, I see how every secret smile, every whispered confession, every glance stolen when no one was watching was pulling apart the fragile threads of the life I thought was stable. Because secrets, no matter how carefully guarded, never stay hidden forever. Every compromise, every excuse, every choice that seemed small in the moment was quietly building the foundation for consequences I wasn't ready to face. Maybe one day the truth will come crashing down. Maybe one day I'll have to stand in front of George, in front of everyone, and answer for what I've done. For now, the truth lives only inside me, pressing on me like a second heartbeat. That night didn't just happen. It carved itself into me. It changed everything, and even though I told myself again and again that it was wrong, I couldn't deny the way I kept being pulled back. He still wanted more, and the truth I hate to admit is that so did I. In those hours, those stolen moments where the rest of the world fell away, nothing else seemed to matter. Nothing but the two of us, and the dangerous secret we now shared.